All right, everyone, settle in. Tonight, we're diving into something gritty, grand, and absolutely unforgiving. Daily life in the Roman Empire. Not as a senator, not as an emperor, no golden laurel crown, no luxurious marble baths. Tonight, you're not Julius Caesar, you're just you, dropped unprepared into a world of sandals, pervasive sewage, and state-sponsored crucifixion. So, before you get too comfortable, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely appreciate what I'm creating here. And I'd love to know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always genuinely fascinating to see our audience connecting from all corners of the globe. Now, go ahead and dim those lights, perhaps switch on a fan for that gentle background hum, and let's smoothly transition into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes to the chaotic sounds of yelling, the clucking of chickens, and a baby crying somewhere down the hall. Congratulations, you've just woken up in a Roman insula, the ancient equivalent of an apartment building. Think of it as a multi-story death trap held together with dust, fervent prayer, and very questionable architecture. You're probably living on the third or fourth floor, which is bad news. The higher the floor, the poorer the tenant, and the more likely your ceiling will catastrophically collapse when someone above you accidentally spills olive oil. Your room is tiny, no larger than a modern walk-in closet, with stone walls that perpetually sweat in the summer and freeze solid in the winter. There's no proper window, just a small, crude hole that allows in air, smoke, and the occasional curious pigeon. Your mattress is crudely stuffed with straw and teeming with lice. The blanket smells distinctly of damp wool and pervasive regret. There's no furniture, no decorations, and certainly no kitchen facilities. Cooking inside is strictly forbidden. A small fire could easily ignite the entire building, and fire codes haven't even been conceived yet. Your only possessions consist of a simple clay cup, a worn-out tunic, and perhaps a wooden comb if you're feeling particularly extravagant. There's no toilet, not in your room, not even in your entire building. Your chamber pot sits conspicuously in the corner, silently judging your every move. You'll have to carry it down narrow, rickety stairs to empty its contents into the street gutter below, hopefully without slipping and adding your own body to the morning's collective offerings. Oh, and the walls are paper thin. You can distinctly hear your neighbor praying, coughing, arguing with his wife, and regrettably not arguing with his wife if you catch my drift. The air hangs heavy with smoke, pervasive mildew, and the distinct perfume of unwashed humanity. Someone downstairs is already baking bread, but you are definitely not invited. Street vendors are loudly yelling prices for figs and fish guts. A distant centurion is barking sharp orders at someone who is likely already bleeding. You haven't even stepped out the door yet, and you're sweating, itchy, and possibly inhaling lead dust from the plumbing. Welcome to the Roman workday. You're not an emperor, you're not a gladiator, you're just another unfortunate soul in an overcrowded tenement, desperately trying not to fall down the stairs or inadvertently anger a city god before noon. And you still have 23 grueling hours to go. Now that you've successfully navigated the descent down the crooked stairs of your insula, it's time to address the second most urgent matter of the morning, your bladder. There's no bathroom in your apartment, of course. No sink, no flush, not even a bucket with a semblance of dignity. Instead, you shuffle down the street, chamber pot in one hand, clinging to your modesty with the other, heading toward the nearest latrina, Rome's version of a public restroom. And calling it public is generous. It's more like a social club for strangers who have no qualms about making intense eye contact while conducting their most private business. You arrive to find a long stone bench with multiple holes cut into it. Beneath the bench, a shallow trough flows with water, just enough to carry away the collective shame of the city's lower classes. You sit down if you dare, and fervently hope the person beside you isn't eager for a chat. Privacy? A non-existent concept. Doors? Absolutely not. People treat it like a town square with amplified acoustics. Businessmen openly discuss grain prices while squatting. A retired soldier loudly complains about his sciatica. Meanwhile, you're just desperately trying not to look directly across from you, where another man is casually chewing olives and maintaining unwavering eye contact. Then comes the real highlight, the tersorium. It's a communal sponge on a stick kept in a bucket of vinegar or salt water. In theory, you are expected to rinse it thoroughly before use. In practice, well, let's just say this particular sponge has witnessed unspeakable things. You wipe hesitantly and pray the vinegar did its job effectively. If you're feeling lucky, perhaps you remembered to bring your own rag. If you're feeling wealthy, perhaps some moss. But chances are, you just used what everyone else used and now carry the quiet shame of shared hygiene. And if you think you can bypass this ritual by simply relieving yourself in an alley, think again. Public urination laws are enforced, fines are real, and Roman law enforcement is not known for issuing subtle warnings. Once you're finished, you wash your hands. Wait, no, you don't. There's no soap, no running water, just a quick rinse from the communal basin that has been touched by more fingers than a handshake competition. You leave the latrina feeling physically lighter and perhaps slightly more dead inside. But hey, that's just Rome. And now it's time for breakfast, if you can even call it that. So, you've taken care of your morning business and somehow managed not to fall into a gutter or get arrested. Impressive. Now it's time for breakfast, which is usually touted as the most important meal of the day, unless you're Roman, in which case it's more of a polite formality before a full day of work and misery. Welcome to the ientaculum, a Roman morning feast that typically consists of precisely two things: stale bread and watered-down wine. Sometimes there's a bit of cheese, occasionally some olives, but mostly there's just profound disappointment. Forget about coffee, the Romans didn't have it. No eggs, no bacon, no pancakes, and certainly no oat milk lattes. Breakfast isn't designed to be satisfying, it's merely meant to prevent you from immediately collapsing. Your bread is likely panis rusticus, a rough, chewy lump of grain and grit, probably baked yesterday or the day before. It's dense enough to qualify as a weapon and possesses a texture akin to limestone. The wine is always diluted because even the Romans understood that being drunk before sunrise in ancient Rome was a very bad idea, unless you were a senator. There's no kitchen in your cramped apartment, so you consume this meal standing in the bustling street or squatting beside a public fountain, alongside other equally unenthused citizens gnawing on their bread as if it were flavorless tree bark. If you happen to possess a bit of oil or a smear of garum, Rome's famously salty, fermented fish sauce, then congratulations, you've just added an aromatic horror to your already bleak meal. If you're wealthy, perhaps you'd enjoy some fruit or honey. But you're not. You're a typical Roman citizen, just affluent enough to not be enslaved and just impoverished enough to envy your neighbor's broken jug of goat milk. Sometimes vendors pass by, loudly selling hot chickpea fritters or honeyed pastries, and for a fleeting moment, you feel a surge of hope. But then you remember your coin pouch is emptier than a gladiator's sympathy. So you stoically bite your bread and pretend it's cake. And this is how your day begins, with carbs, mild dehydration, and a growing realization that you're about to walk 7 miles in flimsy Roman sandals with nothing but stale crumbs in your stomach and a lingering buzz from last night's leftover wine. It doesn't improve from here, because now it's time to head to work. After your hearty breakfast of bread and mild despair, it's time to face the brutal Roman workday. And let's be clear, unless you're a senator, a poet with a generous patron, or one of the lucky few who inherited land from a deceased uncle with no other heirs, you are working, and you are doing it strenuously. You might be a common laborer, a porter, a potter, a bricklayer, a street cleaner, or if your luck has truly soured, a sewer worker. Rome has an insatiable need for many things: expansive roads, intricate aqueducts, majestic temples, and public baths. And someone has to construct them. That someone is you, using your bare hands under the relentless sun, wearing sandals that offer all the arch support of a soggy leaf. The Roman workday commences early, very early indeed. The sun is barely above the horizon, but the foreman is already shouting in Latin and vigorously waving a stick. If you're late, you're docked a day's pay or worse, beaten, publicly shamed, or fired, which in Roman terms means you face starvation with honor. Your tools are basic. You dig with a shovel seemingly made of splinters and prayer, carry heavy bricks on your back, and haul water from a cistern that smells vaguely of old socks and desperate ambition. There are no gloves, no helmets, just sweat, pervasive dust, and the constant chilling awareness that one slip might simultaneously crush your spine and your career. And if you're a craftsman, good luck. You're competing with hundreds of other artisans selling the same clay pots, flimsy sandals, or cheap tunics. Underpricing is rampant, and quality often doesn't matter if a richer citizen simply decides they dislike your face. Even more elevated jobs like messenger, accountant, or teacher are far from glamorous. You're either frantically running through Rome's chaotic streets with scrolls tucked under your arm, meticulously recording numbers for someone who will immediately forget your name, or desperately trying to teach Latin to a group of senators' spoiled children who already believe they are literal gods. Women? They're working too. Spinning wool, weaving cloth, selling vegetables, or managing stalls in the bustling markets, in addition to raising children, managing the household, and somehow surviving childbirth. Multitasking existed long before it was considered cool. And after all this, you might get a short break for lunch, perhaps, if your supervisor isn't in a bad mood or attempting to impress a visiting prefect. So yes, you work or you literally die trying. Rome may be eternal, but your back certainly won't be. So you've successfully made it through the morning without fainting from exhaustion or being publicly flogged. Now it's time to navigate the ancient Roman street, a chaotic, crowded gauntlet seemingly designed by someone who profoundly hated personal space and public health. Picture it. The sun is high, the city is buzzing with activity, and the street is vibrantly alive. Not in a poetic way, but in a literal, overwhelming way. Rats scurry everywhere, flies buzz incessantly, stray dogs roam, livestock wander freely, beggars plead, merchants loudly yell in 6 different languages, children run wild, and cunning thieves pretend to assist old ladies while deftly pickpocketing your coin purse. It's akin to Times Square if Times Square lacked any plumbing whatsoever, and everyone was casually carrying a goat. Let's discuss the infrastructure. Roman roads were engineering marvels, perfectly straight, masterfully paved, and usually overflowing with a disgusting blend of urine, spilled wine, vomit, animal waste, and the lingering remains of last night's garum sauce. The very middle of the street effectively functions as an open sewer. Step off the raised footpath without looking, and congratulations, you've just baptized your sandal in the foul holy waters of human misery. Wagons clatter by with no discernible speed limits, no crosswalks, and zero regard for pedestrians. They simply do not stop for you. In fact, Roman law actually prohibited heavy cart traffic during daylight hours within the city, which paradoxically meant drivers raced through at night in the dark without brakes, like frenzied charioteers on a strict deadline. If you're not crushed by wheels, you'll be constantly bumped by elbows, large baskets, or an angry fishmonger shouting about his spoiled eels. Then there's the air, thick with smoke from cooking fires, the sweet scent of incense from temples, and the distinct aroma of public latrines wafting on the breeze. Oh, and dead animals. Sometimes people simply leave them there. If a dog drops dead in the forum, someone might just casually toss a cloth over it and walk away. And don't forget the spontaneous public spectacles, sudden brawls, impromptu protests, or a loud politician's parade that can block traffic for hours while trumpet players blast off key fanfare directly in your face. So yes, the Roman street is vibrantly alive and seemingly determined to get you. Slip on a fig, get hit by a runaway cart, or accidentally offend a patrician's pampered pet monkey, and your day could end faster than Caesar's on the Ides of March. And all you were trying to do was buy some lentils. You're sweaty, dusty, and desperately craving a splash of something cold. The good news? You live in Rome, a city justly renowned for its aqueducts, those magnificent engineering marvels that efficiently carry fresh water from the distant hills straight into the very heart of the empire. The bad news? That water shows no particular concern for your personal well-being. Unless you're wealthy enough to reside in a domus with your own private fountain, you're sharing water with thousands of your closest coughing, sneezing, perpetually unwashed neighbors. Your available options are the public fountains, where everyone fills their jars, casually washes their feet, and occasionally dunks a child for a quick clean or simple amusement. And by hygiene, we mean a wet version of desperate hope. If you desire to wash up more thoroughly, your best option is the thermae, the Roman public baths. They are ubiquitous, and everyone uses them. Sounds civilized, right? But here's the uncomfortable truth. The water continuously cycles through multiple pools with no soap, no chlorine, and very little sense of personal modesty. You'll find yourself sitting in a tepid bath with a dozen other men, none of whom possess any concept of personal decorum. Conversations are loud, often political, and occasionally conducted entirely in the nude. A man might attempt to sell you socks while another casually cleans his ears with a stick. And the water itself, it has been through countless others. If you were hoping to feel truly clean, think again. You're essentially marinating in bacteria with a faint hint of eucalyptus. Additionally, a rather alarming fact, the plumbing system often utilizes lead pipes. Yes, lead. Romans were obsessed with engineering brilliance, but showed considerably less concern for chemistry. Over time, that convenient indoor plumbing could cause all sorts of delightful side effects, including anemia, gout, infertility, and if you're truly lucky, madness. Want to drink something safer? Wine. Seriously. Water is viewed with deep suspicion, especially in the poorer districts where contamination from public latrines and street runoff is common. So wine is routinely diluted and consumed throughout the day by men, women, and children alike. Because what better way to survive a crumbling empire than with a gentle, perpetual buzz? So yes, Rome ingeniously brought water into the city before most of the world even knew what a pipe was. But for the average citizen, it's a dangerous gamble every single time you drink, bathe, or even rinse your toes. Enjoy your aqueducts, just don't trust them. Welcome to the Roman Empire, where pain isn't just a possibility, it's the constant background music of your entire life. You stub your toe, no ice, no painkillers. You grit your teeth and relentlessly keep going until it either heals incorrectly or eventually falls off. Break a bone? You crudely wrap it in a dirty rag and try not to breathe too heavily. Get a splinter? Good luck. That's precisely how infections begin and how your life might prematurely end. Roman society isn't keen on comfort. There are no ergonomic tools, no padded seats, no concept of taking it easy. If you're a common laborer, you're lifting heavy bricks with a hernia and a prayer. If you're a soldier, you march 20 grueling miles a day with bleeding feet and a throbbing scorpion bite on your thigh. If you're a woman enduring childbirth, well, welcome to unimaginable agony. Your midwife might know a traditional chant. That's generally the extent of the medical intervention. Every single part of your body is one misstep away from becoming an open wound or a cautionary tale. And unless you happen to live near a temple with a very dedicated healing priest, your best option is crude homemade ointments, aromatic herbal smoke, or simply attempting to ignore the problem until it either miraculously resolves itself or you are resolved into a grave. There's no such thing as anesthesia. Surgeries are performed while you scream into a block of wood. Dislocated shoulder? It's violently popped back into place by a man named Marcus, who learned the technique by watching someone else fail at it. Dental work? Picture a blacksmith. Now picture your open mouth. That's essentially the scene. And if you're enslaved or poor, people don't even pretend to care. You could be bleeding out on the side of the road, and the most sympathy you'll receive is, "Don't stain the mosaic." Even upper-class Romans embraced pain as compelling proof of virtue. Stoicism was the prevailing philosophy of the day. Enduring suffering without complaint was viewed as noble and honorable. If you cried over a broken arm, you weren't just in pain, you were perceived as weak. True Romans suffered in stoic silence, then perhaps meticulously wrote poetry about it later. So yes, pain is a constant companion, and it usually arrives without warning, without remedy, and definitively without sympathy. On that cheerful note, let's take a look at what happens when you actually go to see a Roman doctor. So you've injured yourself. Perhaps it was the infected blister from yesterday's grueling work, or maybe you attempted to shave with a crude bronze blade and now your chin resembles a gladiator training ground. Either way, it's time to seek medical attention, which in ancient Rome is less about definitive healing and more about simply surviving the attempt. Let's begin with the fundamental principles. Roman medicine is a chaotic blend of inherited Greek theory, mystical guesswork, and a surprising abundance of various leaves. The core belief: the human body is governed by 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Feeling unwell? One of them is out of balance. The prescribed solution? Drain something. So your doctor, who may or may not also be your barber, immediately reaches for the leeches or a sharp knife, because bloodletting is the universal default treatment for everything from debilitating migraines to perceived moral failings. Have a persistent cough? Let's open a vein. Feeling depressed? We'll just drain some sadness out of your arm. Surgery? Oh yes, it certainly exists. Roman surgeons possessed scalpels, forceps, and even bone drills. What they fundamentally lacked, however, were anesthetics. You remain fully conscious throughout the entire excruciating procedure, gripping the edge of a wooden table while a man in a dirty toga confidently digs into your flesh with the assurance of someone who once merely read a scroll about it. Antiseptics? Not really a concept. They might wash wounds with wine or vinegar, which does provide some benefit, but also burns with an intensity akin to divine punishment. Infection is a common and often fatal side effect. So is outright death. Prescriptions vary wildly. You might be given honey, garlic, crushed beetles, or a foul poultice made of assorted herbs, ash, and very specific types of animal dung. If things take a turn for the worse, you're advised to sleep in a temple, pray fervently to Asclepius, and hope that divine dreams will miraculously deliver your cure. And if none of it works, well, your doctor shrugs with indifference. Your family lights a somber candle, and your neighbors begin whispering about what ominous kind of omen your death might represent. It's not that Romans were indifferent to health. They just hadn't quite figured out what genuinely helped and what more efficiently led to an early demise. So next time you sneeze, be profoundly grateful for modern antibiotics and for the fact that you don't live in a world where healing often commences with significant blood loss. After a long, grimy day of sweating, bleeding, and dodging carts, you're absolutely starving. Time for dinner, or as the Romans elegantly called it, cena. Just don't expect anything remotely comforting or familiar. Let's start with what is emphatically not on the table. No pizza, no pasta, no tomatoes, no potatoes, no chocolate, no sugar, and absolutely no coffee. None of those things had been discovered or imported yet. This isn't Italian cuisine as you know it. This is pre-Italy edible survival. You sit down to a crude wooden bowl filled with something brown and vaguely hot. It's most likely pulse, a thick porridge made of spelt, beans, or lentils. It tastes like wet gravel with a faint hint of herb, if you're lucky. If you're not lucky, it tastes precisely like wet gravel, without the herb. Protein is a rare commodity, unless you personally caught, trapped, or fished it yourself. Meat is exorbitantly expensive, and even when you do manage to acquire some, it's often already spoiled. Roman cooking lacked refrigeration, so preservation primarily involved heavy salting, smoking, or marinating it in garum, a famously fermented fish sauce that smells like a dead ocean and burns your soul just contemplating it. If you're feeling particularly festive, there might be some boiled vegetables, hard cheese, or the occasional fig. Rich Romans, in contrast, dined on exotic dishes like roasted flamingo, stuffed dormice, or jellyfish in vinegar, delicacies that mostly served to proclaim, "Look at how wealthy I am and how little I care about my actual taste buds." Your wine is always watered down. Drinking it straight is universally considered barbaric. But don't worry, the water it's mixed with is probably questionable too, so you're simply choosing how quickly you want to become ill. Dessert? Perhaps some dried fruit, maybe a few nuts, or perhaps you're currently fasting because it's a feast day honoring a god who frowns upon gluttony. Either way, you're definitely not ending the night with a tiramisu. There are no napkins. You wipe your hands on a shared cloth that 10 other people have used, or simply resort to your tunic and pretend it's clean. By the end of the meal, your stomach feels full but uneasy, and your breath carries the distinct aroma of garlic, wine, and pervasive despair. But at least you're fed. Now all you have to do is survive the Roman nightlife, and trust me, that's far from a relaxing stroll. After a long day filled with grime, relentless toil, and copious amounts of fish sauce, you might be hoping for a little leisure time, something to temporarily distract you from your crumbling apartment and the open sewer outside. Well, good news, you're in Rome, where entertainment is literally everywhere. Bad news, most of it is utterly horrifying. Let's start with the main event, the Colosseum. It's the crown jewel of Roman engineering and the place where your soul quietly dies. This is where vast crowds gather to watch men stab each other for sport, wild animals ferociously devour criminals, and sometimes, if the emperor is feeling particularly dramatic, they'll even reenact full naval battles with real water and real drowning. Admission is free, which sounds incredibly generous until you realize it's free because the state wants you thoroughly distracted while the Senate quietly raises taxes and annexes Armenia. You sit packed tightly between sweaty strangers, cheering as a gladiator loses a limb. There's blood, pervasive sand, and occasional public executions with extra flair. You find yourself clapping, unsure why. Feeling a little sensitive? Prefer theater? Head to the amphitheater for a Roman play. Maybe a tragedy meticulously written in Latin you barely understand, or a raucous farce where the punchline involves someone pretending to defile Jupiter with a sausage. Subtlety is emphatically not a Roman strong suit. If you're feeling sporty, try the Circus Maximus. Chariot races are incredibly fast, thrilling, and regularly fatal. There are no guardrails, no helmets, and an abundance of shouting. Crashes are inevitable and spectacular, and the frenzied crowd absolutely adores it. They're there for the violence and the betting. Don't dare to cheer for the wrong team unless you're fully prepared to fight your way home. And then there's the street entertainment. Fire breathers, agile acrobats, loud musicians, cunning con artists, and the occasional philosophical rant from a barefoot man with nothing left to lose. If you don't like the current show, just wait 5 minutes. Something else, or someone else, will inevitably start yelling. But behind all of it, there's a strange, brilliant madness. Rome didn't just distract its populace, it dazzled them into forgetting how brutal daily life truly was. It expertly weaponized spectacle. And if that doesn't numb you enough, there's always more wine. Now, let's take a walk through Roman justice. Spoiler, it's not comforting. You've survived a grueling workday, a questionable dinner, and witnessed a gladiator being impaled for applause. You might naively think you're safe now, that as long as you keep your head down, the law will somehow protect you. Ah, that's adorable. In Rome, the law doesn't primarily protect, it reminds. It reminds you that you are small, utterly replaceable, and that mercy is a luxury strictly reserved for marble statues of emperors. First off, legal status is paramount. If you're a citizen, you theoretically possess certain rights. You cannot be publicly flogged unless someone truly important becomes exceptionally annoyed, and you are entitled to a proper trial. If you're a non-citizen, however, justice often comes in the harsh form of a fist, a searing branding iron, or a swift execution outside the city gates. Slaves, they are mere property. If a slave murders their master, even if the master arguably deserved it, every single slave in the household might be executed just to send a chilling message. That message? Don't even contemplate it. If you're accused of a crime, don't expect a calm, private chat with a lawyer. Trials are public theater. The wealthier party arrives with numerous witnesses, ample bribes, and dramatic, exaggerated gestures. You arrive with your worn tunic and a profound sinking feeling. If you can cry on cue, that might just offer a sliver of help. If you have no powerful patrons, you'd best pray fervently to Jupiter and hope the magistrate isn't suffering from a hangover. Punishments are meticulously designed not just to inflict pain, but to serve as a brutal deterrent. Thieves can be branded or have their hands violently broken. Liars might have their tongue pierced. Fraud, public flogging, or exile if you're exceptionally lucky. And if you dare to insult the emperor, it's not merely jail time, it's death, usually delivered in a creatively agonizing manner. Some crimes necessitate public punishment, ideally in front of a cheering crowd even louder than the one for the morning's beheading. Crucifixion is a popular choice, long, slow, and utterly humiliating. It wasn't reserved solely for Jesus. It was the go-to punishment for rebels, common robbers, and anyone the state wished to make a brutal example of. And remember, law enforcement isn't there to assist you. The vigils are Rome's version of firefighters and police, underpaid, notoriously overworked, and frequently corrupt. If you're mugged, they might simply shrug. If you offer them a bribe, they might even help you mug someone else. So yes, Rome has laws, meticulously written in stone, eloquently recited in forums, but they primarily serve power, not impartial justice. Now, let's discuss the gods, because you're not just obeying mortal men here, you're profoundly on Jupiter's turf. After surviving the chaotic streets and deftly dodging Roman justice, you might hope to find solace in religion. A little peace, a touch of personal spirituality. Nope, not here. In the Roman Empire, religion is not a private affair. It's a vast institution, an ever-present cloud of incense and relentless obligation that envelops every waking moment of your life. You don't choose your gods, they choose you. And there are so many of them. There's a god for virtually everything imaginable. Door hinges, cardia, sewers, cloacina, boundaries, terminus, and even pervasive mildew, robigus. You can't walk 5 paces without encountering a shrine. If you fail to pause to bow, light a candle, or mutter a brief prayer, you're not just being impolite. You're actively inviting catastrophe. Perhaps not today, but eventually. And when your roof inevitably collapses, everyone will nod sagely and remark, "Ah yes, he neglected the Saturnalia offering." Religious festivals punctuate the calendar, with dozens occurring each year. On those designated days, business halts, animals are sacrificed, and the air carries the distinct aroma of roasting bull and damp marble. You attend out of piety, certainly, but also out of profound fear, because if the gods are not properly honored, they will retaliate with devastating plagues, prolonged droughts, or a truly disastrous harvest that ruins everyone's precious lentil supply. Now let's talk about emperor worship. The state unequivocally demands that you revere the emperor not merely as a ruler, but as a living god. You're expected to offer incense at his altar, fervently sing his praises, and never ever roll your eyes during a triumphal procession. That's perilously close to treason. If you're caught not actively participating in public worship, say you're a little too quiet during the Vestalia or you fail to show up to toss grain into the temple flame, you could be labeled impious, atheistic, or worst of all, suspicious. Suspicion in Rome is like blood in shark-infested waters, and if you're part of a foreign cult, you'd better keep that information strictly under wraps. Unless it's officially approved, the state has no fondness for unfamiliar gods, unless they happen to bring wine, taxes, or new soldiers. Roman religion isn't primarily about deep personal belief, it's about meticulous ritual. You don't have to genuinely feel it, you just have to perform it correctly, on time, and in public. And you'd better smile while you sacrifice that goat. Speaking of social performance, let's climb the greasy pole of Roman ambition in the next chapter. You've humbly bowed to the gods, somehow avoided a potentially ruinous lawsuit, and even survived a public bath without contracting something mythical. But here comes the most exhausting part of Roman life, the relentless social hierarchy. It's a brutal, finely tuned machine where every word, every subtle gesture, and even the precise placement of your sandal strap could either make or utterly break you. Roman society is a steep ladder, but it's perpetually covered in slippery oil and lined with strategically placed daggers. At the very pinnacle are the senators, old money patricians who flaunt purple stripes on their togas and possess land ownership so vast it practically has its own postal code. Below them, the equestrians, representing the wealthy business class. Then come the plebeians like you, the struggling middle and lower classes. Below that are the freedmen, slaves, foreigners, and that poor guy who accidentally insulted a statue of Augustus once too many times. Want to climb upward? You'll desperately need patrons, powerful individuals who offer you protection in exchange for your lifelong loyalty, the performance of various errands, numerous favors, and the occasional crucial vote. It's akin to having a boss, a godfather, and a landlord all rolled into one charmingly condescending package. Each morning, you are expected to visit your patron's home as part of the obligatory salutatio. You wait patiently in line with other clients, praise his latest haircut, perhaps compliment his son's toga, and then humbly beg for a favor, usually money, food, or a crucial recommendation. If you're fortunate, he might toss you a coin and allow you the honor of carrying his litter through the bustling forum. Congratulations, you're now tangibly connected. Every move you make is meticulously watched and severely judged. Your clothes must be clean, not necessarily fashionable, but impeccably clean. Your speech must be proper and respectful. Your friends must be carefully selected. And whatever you do, never display overt ambition. That makes powerful people extremely nervous. If you ascend too quickly, others will immediately conspire to knock you back down, whether socially or quite literally. Networking is a form of warfare. Gossip is a potent currency. The wrong casual comment at a lavish banquet can abruptly end your entire career. The right strategic marriage, however, can save your entire bloodline. But you must play the game with extreme caution. Love is for romantic poets. The rest of Rome marries for powerful alliances and lucrative estate access. And even if you manage to climb high, never get too comfortable. One disastrous harvest, one missed religious ritual, one jealous rival, and it could all be over in an instant. You won't even hear the dagger coming. Now the sun is setting. Surely things calm down at night, right? Not in Rome. The sun dips below the rooftops of Rome, and for a fleeting moment you might think, maybe now, finally, I can rest. But nightfall in the Roman Empire isn't a time for peace. It's a dramatic shift in tone from noisy and chaotic to dark and downright lethal. First, let's talk about lighting. There isn't any, unless you're wealthy enough to burn expensive oil lamps all night, and few are. Most people rely on unreliable moonlight, ingrained memory, and blind hope to find their way through the labyrinthine alleys of the city. If you trip and fall, no one's coming to help you. They might just take your shoes. The vigiles, Rome's official night watchmen, are theoretically supposed to patrol the streets, prevent fires, and stop crimes. In practice, they're chronically overworked, severely underpaid, and often more interested in napping than performing heroics. Some are brave, most are easily bribable, and all of them are massively outnumbered. Criminals are well aware of this. Thieves, cunning cut purses, and the occasional bored ex-gladiator roam the pervasive shadows, actively seeking easy marks. If you're walking home alone, you are the easy mark. It doesn't matter who you are. Unless you're armed, incredibly fast, or somehow invisible, you're at significant risk. And then there's fire, Rome's greatest nighttime terror. The insulae, those charming death trap apartments you sleep in, are primarily constructed of wood and fleeting dreams. Cooking after dark is illegal for precisely this reason, but laws hold little sway over a hungry tenant. A single overturned oil lamp can reduce an entire city block to smoldering ash within hours. The infamous Great Fire of 64 CE didn't ignite itself, but once it began, it raged like Mars in an exceptionally foul mood. You might naively think your building is safe until you suddenly smell smoke at midnight and chillingly realize there's no organized evacuation plan. You frantically grab your one tunic, your chamber pot, and perhaps a shred of your dignity, and sprint for your life down a rapidly collapsing staircase. And if it's not fire or opportunistic thieves, it's the incessant noise. Drunken parties echo loudly through the streets. Processions for obscure gods parade by with pounding drums and boisterous shouting. And if a senator's mistress is upset, everyone within a 3-block radius is intimately aware of it. Sleep in ancient Rome is a rare luxury. Silence is a myth, and personal safety? That's strictly reserved for the wealthy, the well-armed, and the extraordinarily lucky. But hey, morning's almost here. You just have to survive one more chaotic night, and then repeat the entire cycle. You woke up in a crumbling insula. You survived navigating public toilets, dodging relentless chariot traffic, witnessing gladiator gore, enduring lead poisoning, dealing with leeches, participating in mandatory religious festivals, escaping burning rooftops, and ingesting half-cooked lentils soaked in fermented fish sauce. You bowed to gods you barely comprehend, obeyed laws that offered you no protection, and somehow managed to sleep through riots, scurrying rats, and the occasional public decapitation. You're dirty, utterly tired, possibly infected, and emotionally scarred by the lingering memory of the communal sponge. And it's only been a single day. Would you last another? Honestly, no. You wouldn't. Most modern humans, accustomed to air conditioning, readily available antibiotics, and 5-minute delivery windows, would simply crumble by lunchtime. You'd probably give up before the second round of garum. And yet the Romans endured this for centuries. Because here's the maddening, magnificent truth. Amidst all this filth, brutality, and deafening noise, Rome worked. Somehow. They built grand cities, extensive roads, intricate aqueducts, vast libraries, majestic temples, and colossal amphitheaters. They expanded their empire across entire continents. They meticulously administered complex laws, developed profound philosophy, accurately mapped the stars, performed surprisingly advanced surgeries, and invented concrete that still stands stronger than most modern buildings today. They created sophisticated systems that profoundly shaped Europe and beyond for over 2,000 years. Latin became the linguistic root of half the languages you hear today. Their architectural styles inspired countless cathedrals, parliaments, and even modern college campuses. Their political concepts, such as republics, senates, and veto power, still echo loudly through contemporary democracies. But this unparalleled achievement came at an immense cost. For the average Roman, not the powerful emperors, not the elite bathed in marble, daily life was a hard-fought, relentless grind. And yet they persevered, they adapted, they simply had no other choice. Because Rome wasn't built of gleaming gold, it was forged from sweat, pervasive fear, relentless ambition, and sheer survival. Layer by layer, person by person, century by bloody century, and that's precisely why it lasted. You'd be begging to return to modern plumbing and antihistamines by mid-afternoon. You'd readily trade your entire denarii pouch for a hot shower and a chair with a comfortable back. And that's perfectly okay. You don't need to survive ancient Rome. You just need to understand its profound complexities. And maybe, just maybe, appreciate that someone somewhere once walked those very same filthy streets and helped construct that enduring empire so you could sit here today, clean, safe, and mildly horrified. Imagine being a Parthian princess in the 2nd century BCE. You possess royal blood coursing through your veins, a name destined for legend, Rhodogun. And more importantly, you inhabit a world where your family spends more time fiercely battling rebels than hosting elaborate dinner parties. Rhodogun wasn't born into a life of peace and pearls. She was born into a reality of grit, thundering horses, and the constant, unsettling possibility that someone might poison your dates. Her father, Mithridates I, was no idle king. He was the very ruler who expanded Parthia from a dusty fringe kingdom into a formidable empire that would one day challenge the might of Rome. But such rapid expansion inevitably brings problems, namely widespread rebellions, insidious betrayals, and those stubborn neighbors who simply refuse to accept that your army now occupies their backyard. As a young woman, Rhodogun would have grown up witnessing envoys heatedly arguing, commanders meticulously drawing battle maps in the sand, and palace scribes frantically trying to keep track of who remained loyal that particular week. She wasn't merely trained in the delicate arts of silk and courtly ceremony. She learned astute statecraft, powerful command presence, and how to wear battle armor that didn't clash with her elaborate earrings. It's crucial to understand the significant role of Parthian women here. While not always occupying the central spotlight, Parthian noblewomen were no strangers to wielding power. Some actively ruled cities, others skillfully plotted dynastic alliances, and a select few like Rhodogun achieved legendary status not for who they married, but for who they decisively defeated. And defeat, she most certainly did. But that part of the story comes later. At this point in her life, Rhodogun's name was already widely recognized. She symbolized not just royal lineage, but an embodiment of Parthian pride. She carried with her the immense expectation that she would either marry a king or, in spirit, become one herself. She didn't seem content with passively sitting on the sidelines while cities burned or provinces rebelled. While most royal ladies were being meticulously oiled and perfumed, Rhodogun was likely diligently reviewing military reports and managing court logistics. She had no time for superficial vanity, and as fate would have it, she would one day make a solemn vow that involved not washing her hair until a persistent rebellion was utterly crushed. Spoiler alert, it took quite some time. But before we arrive at that dusty crown moment, we need to understand the nature of the rebellion that dared to provoke a princess who preferred leading troops to wearing gold. The Parthian Empire, despite its grand appearance on maps, was more akin to duct tape than solid marble. Stretching from the Persian Gulf to the very edges of Mesopotamia and beyond, it was tenuously stitched together by strategic marriages, solemn oaths, and the occasional sword firmly pressed against someone's neck. So when a rebellion violently erupted in the western provinces, likely in Media or Babylonia, it wasn't exactly surprising. What was surprising was the sheer audacity of the rebels. These were not merely disgruntled tax evaders. These were full-blown aristocrats and powerful city leaders, enraged by the central authority and perhaps emboldened by the young age or absence of a male royal enforcer. They didn't just throw a fit, They seized fortresses, brutally silenced Parthian envoys, and essentially instructed the crown to go polish its own sandals. Now, under ordinary circumstances, the king would have dispatched a trusted general or a politically ambitious cousin with more ambition than brains. But these were not ordinary circumstances. For reasons still debated by historians, perhaps strategic timing, logistical constraints, or sheer royal defiance, Rhodogun herself took command. And not just in the abstract, I'll approve the battle plans kind of way. No, she personally mounted a horse, donned battle armor, and made a public, solemn vow that would become the stuff of enduring legend. She would not wash, comb, or otherwise tend to her hair until the rebellion was utterly crushed. It was a bold, dramatic, and frankly a nightmare for any self-respecting court stylist. But that vow, as dramatic as it sounds, wasn't born of vanity. It was a powerful declaration, a potent visual symbol that inextricably linked her personal dignity and appearance to the very fate of the empire. Every time someone observed her tangled, dust-laden hair, they would be starkly reminded, this conflict is not over until we achieve victory. And that powerful message worked. Soldiers rallied with renewed vigor. The troops saw not just a princess, they witnessed a commander who was literally allowing her own beauty to decay with the ongoing war. She embodied true Parthian resilience, the kind that didn't rely on royal thrones but on sharp thorns, pervasive dust, and honest sweat. Meanwhile, the rebels probably didn't know whether to laugh in disbelief or panic in fear. They had anticipated confronting a general, perhaps a diplomat. Instead, they faced a furious, unwashed woman who was riding directly towards their gates with steely resolve in her eyes and no time for pleasantries or hair conditioner. And worse, she meant business. When Rhodogun departed from the capital, she was not escorted by a lavish court parade or showered in delicate rose petals. She was accompanied by disciplined cavalry, unyielding grit, and the immense weight of an empire that desperately needed its rebels squashed like an overripe fig. And she certainly looked the part. Gone were any vestiges of courtly delicacy. Her hair, famously unkempt, began to take on a life of its own, hanging like a grim banner of war-torn determination. In a world utterly obsessed with appearances, she transformed her own into a potent weapon. The campaign was not swift. This wasn't a single siege, easily resolved with a bribe and a battering ram. The rebel cities were well fortified and filled with smug confidence. They had anticipated hesitation from the central power, not a battle-hardened woman galloping through the dust with fire in her gaze. But Rhodogun did not waver. Her military instincts proved exceptionally sharp, perhaps even sharper than many of the men who had led before her. She skillfully employed classic Parthian strategies: rapid mobility, cunning feigned retreats, and swift hit-and-run raids. Her forces would materialize at the edge of a rebel-held city, vanish like smoke, and then reappear a day later from an unexpected flank. Reports suggest her soldiers admired her not merely as a symbolic figure, but as a brilliant tactician. She didn't ride safely behind the lines. She was at the forefront, dirt under her nails and fury burning under her helmet. And as the weeks relentlessly dragged on, so too did her hair. It is said that by the third month, the strands had begun to knot into thick ropes, laden with dust, sweat, and the quiet whispers of battlefield prayers. But that only intensified her terrifying image to her enemies and deepened the reverence of her own men. Rebels derisively called her the Witch Queen, not because she overtly practiced magic, but because no noble woman, in their limited understanding, should still be fighting relentlessly in the field and steadfastly refusing a proper bath. Surely, they reasoned, something unnatural must be at work. But there was nothing magical about it, just sheer, unyielding discipline. By the time her army laid siege to the final rebel stronghold, her legend had grown faster than the rebellion itself had expanded. In taverns and military tents alike, soldiers quipped that the enemy wasn't afraid of Parthian swords. They were simply terrified that Rhodogun would never wash again. And truthfully, they weren't entirely wrong. The last stronghold of the rebellion loomed ahead, a formidable walled city rumored to be impenetrable, where the rebel leaders had dug in like ticks on a dog. Supplies had been meticulously hoarded, archers lined the parapets with watchful eyes, and the gates had been reinforced with the kind of smug confidence only traitors possess. They foolishly believed they could outlast Radagun. A grave mistake. By now, her unique appearance was legendary. Word had spread not only throughout the empire but deep into enemy territory. "The woman who won't wash," they whispered with a mix of fear and disbelief, has arrived. Some said her hair had miraculously turned to iron. Others claimed she hadn't slept in weeks. The myths surrounding her piled up like siege ladders. But Radagun was no mere myth. She was real, and she possessed formidable tactics. Instead of launching a reckless direct assault, she opted for a slow, punishing siege. She systematically cut off trade routes. She expertly intercepted messengers. She even subtly poisoned wells. The rebels had braced for a brutal battle of swords. Instead, they faced agonizing starvation. She cleverly weaponized time itself, allowing her enemies to rot from the inside out. And all the while, she camped resolutely outside the city with her loyal soldiers, appearing as just another commander beneath the canvas tents. She shared their meager meals, gritty bread and lukewarm wine. She meticulously inspected their armor. She led patrols. And she still, despite every single opportunity, steadfastly refused to so much as touch a comb. For her dedicated soldiers, the vow had become deeply sacred. No one dared suggest she break it, even in jest. It had transformed into a living embodiment of Parthian pride, a powerful symbol that their collective suffering was not in vain. Every single tangled strand of her hair served as a potent reminder, we are still actively engaged in this fight. Inside the beleaguered rebel city, morale rapidly crumbled. They had expected to demoralize the enemy by enduring. Instead, it was they who began to wither from within. Their own commanders began to quarrel fiercely. Food supplies dwindled to critical levels. Whispers of desertion began to ripple through their ranks like spreading cracks through stone. And then came the breaking point. A small, seemingly insignificant gate, left unguarded for just an hour, perhaps out of sheer fatigue, perhaps due to deliberate sabotage, was discovered by one of Radagun's astute scouts. That night, under the cloak of darkness and aided by the wind, her forces slipped silently in and opened the main gates from within. By morning, the city was unequivocally hers, and Radagun, her face streaked with sweat and ash, stood triumphantly atop the battlements, unbathed, victorious, and utterly terrifying. Victory was not declared with triumphant trumpets or grand parades. It was powerfully declared with water. After months of dust, relentless battle, and unyielding pursuit, Radagun stood before her assembled army, not in royal robes, but in the same worn battlefield garb she had donned since the campaign began. Her armor bore distinct dents from rebel blades, her face was deeply lined from sun exposure and immense strain, and her hair, her wild, matted, filthy hair, now hung down her back like a lion's mane crafted from wire and legend. But she had achieved her objective. Every rebel city had fallen. Every oathbreaker had been brought low. And now, with her solemn vow completely fulfilled, she could finally do what no one in the empire had dared to rush. She could wash her hair. According to tradition and later accounts passed down through oral history, Radagun summoned her servants not to a private golden chamber, but to a public courtyard. She explicitly desired her soldiers, the very ones who had bled beside her, to bear witness to this pivotal moment. Basins were filled, fragrant oils were gently warmed, and combs were retrieved from storage like sacred relics. And then, under the vast open sky, the warrior princess of Parthia, caked in the grime of relentless war, began the ritual of scrubbing away months of rebellion. It was profoundly symbolic. Every tangle undone was another city reclaimed. Every rinse of water over her scalp symbolically washed away defiance, soaking into the earth as if the very land itself had been purified and restored. Some accounts say she wept, others claim she laughed. But what no one disputed was the profound silence among the troops as they watched. Hardened men, scarred and sunburned, stood like silent statues as Radagun emerged from her ritual, completely transformed. No crown was physically placed on her head. She didn't need one. The dust had become her diadem. The act of not washing her hair had become more powerful than any precious jewel. And in that powerful moment, Parthia didn't just possess a princess, it gained an enduring symbol. She could have returned to court in triumph, allowing scribes to compose flattering odes and nobles to fall over themselves in effusive praise. But she did not rush back to luxurious comfort. She chose to remain with her loyal troops for a while longer. She dined simply with them. She listened attentively to their concerns. She intuitively understood that her legend had just begun, but she did not wish for it to be forged in ephemeral gold. She desired it to be powerfully forged in lasting memory. After the hair washing that became an event for the ages, Rodagun could have ridden directly to the capital with grand fanfare, unfurling banners, and enough propaganda to last a century. But she chose not to. Instead, she deliberately took the long route back, systematically visiting the cities she had painstakingly reclaimed, one by one, traversing their streets, meticulously inspecting their defenses, and ensuring that no lingering embers of rebellion still glowed beneath the ashes. This was not merely ceremony, it was astute strategy. Rodagun understood the inherent danger of victory, how swiftly it can dissolve into dangerous complacency. Empires don't fall from defeat alone. They often collapse from forgetting the very reason they fought in the first place. She wanted both the former rebels and the loyalists to fully comprehend that Parthian strength was not solely derived from cavalry and coin. It was profoundly embodied in her very presence. A woman who consistently chose hardship over personal comfort and earned unwavering loyalty through compelling example, not through arbitrary decree. And unwavering loyalty she unequivocally received. Everywhere she traveled, people gathered, not merely to gawk at royalty, but to stare in profound awe at her. Not polished, not perfumed, but undeniably real. She did not bring fear, she brought accountability. She requested detailed reports, listened attentively to complaints, and personally paid for supplies out of her own war coffers. She generously rewarded cities that had remained loyal and offered clemency, carefully and cautiously, to those who sincerely repented. By the time she finally reached the royal court, her return had already transformed into a living legend. Scribes frantically rushed to record her extraordinary tale. Artists fiercely debated how best to capture her, whether wild-haired and battle-worn, or radiant and reborn. Ministers whispered anxiously about the profound implications. A woman commanding armies, meticulously keeping sacred oaths, and now standing at the very heart of Parthian power, with the fierce loyalty of half the provinces firmly in her hand. And here emerged the profound dilemma. What do you do with a princess who is more popular and respected than most kings? Some eagerly urged that she be married off, as if that act alone would somehow contain her immense influence. Others desired her to be permanently placed in charge of border defenses. But Rodagun herself didn't seem overtly concerned with titles or complex court politics. She had undeniably proven what she needed to. The battlefield had been her true throne, the dust her crowning glory, and her name, already indelibly etched in the hearts of soldiers and citizens alike, required no royal inscription to endure. She didn't need a formal coronation. She had already been crowned, not with precious gold, but with the indelible marks of history. In the months following her victorious campaign, Rodagun did not actively seek the limelight, but it inevitably followed her. She became a frequent subject of poetry, sculpture, pervasive gossip, and profound awe, not because she demanded it, but because she had undeniably earned it. Every soldier who had fought under her command returned home with a compelling tale, and every tale amplified her image, making her larger, more enduring, and utterly untouchable. Yet in the silken palace halls of Parthia, where politics slithered like venomous snakes behind elaborate silk curtains, her quietude was unsettling. She didn't boast, she didn't lobby for power, she didn't demand new titles or vast lands. Instead, she observed keenly, listened attentively, and understood implicitly. The real battlefield had simply shifted from stone walls to hushed, whispered conversations. Even the king, her father, or possibly her brother, depending on the exact moment in the tangled Parthian dynastic timeline, had to tread with extreme caution. Rodagun was not merely popular, she commanded a level of respect that few men at court could ever hope to rival. She was not adored for her beauty or her lineage, but for her exceptional leadership, for her unwavering command. She had transformed her personal vow into a powerful policy, her physical grubbiness into enduring folklore. And yet, the profound silence she maintained was as deliberate and strategic as any complex military maneuver. She did not reveal to others what she planned next, perhaps because even she did not yet fully know. For the first time in years, she wasn't actively fighting. She wasn't commanding troops or outwitting rebellious factions. She was still. And that very stillness unnerved many. What does a woman who conquered without a crown choose to do next? One theory among historians is that Rodagun skillfully used this silence as strategic leverage. Her mere presence, her every quiet nod or fleeting glance, subtly forced crucial decisions. Officials hesitated to propose flawed policies for fear she might frown. Generals deliberately delayed campaigns, hoping she might eventually weigh in. Her silence was not passive, it was a potent tool. She had discovered that not speaking could often be more powerful than speaking. And so she remained, a living legend, gracefully walking the palace corridors, her freshly washed hair braided not just with gold thread, but with the enduring strands of memory. Her very existence profoundly challenged the established norms of her time. She had powerfully proven that Parthian might was not exclusively confined to masculine hands. It could bravely ride into battle with tangled hair and return triumphantly with cities at its feet. And all she had to do now was patiently wait. Because sometimes the greatest strategic move is no move at all. As the years passed, Rodagun's name gradually faded from the formal historical records. Parthian scribes, more eager to elevate kings and dynasties than unruly warrior princesses, began to deliberately downplay her significant campaign. The very silence she once skillfully employed as a weapon now became the convenient excuse for her historical erasure. No grand mausoleum was ever erected in her name. No epic poem commissioned by the state bore her formidable face on golden scrolls. But that's the thing about true legend. It doesn't require official permission to survive. In the remote outposts where her army had once marched, in the humble villages she had compassionately spared, her name remained a whispered spell. Mothers recounted stories of her to their daughters, not as a mere fairy tale, but as a cautionary warning to any man who dared to underestimate a woman driven by a profound mission. Soldiers meticulously recited her tactics as if they were sacred texts. And the rebels? Well, even decades later, they still spoke of her as if she might rematerialize from the dust, her hair flying like war banners, ready for another confrontation. There's something profoundly unsettling about someone who shatters every rule of their time and still emerges victorious. Rodagun was not content to be a mere decoration in a royal court. She did not idly play the flute, paint delicate birds, or diligently practice the refined art of being quietly ignored. She blazed through her era like a magnificent comet and then vanished just as swiftly. Historians have endlessly debated what ultimately became of her. Some believe she genuinely retired from public life, choosing profound peace over the complexities of politics. Others theorize she remained a powerful advisor in the shadows, subtly shaping Parthian strategy from behind the veil of anonymity. A few romantics claim she rode out one final time to settle a border dispute and simply disappeared into legend. A tale never officially confirmed, never definitively denied. But what is unequivocally certain is this: her legacy endured precisely where it mattered most, among the common people. She may not have physically worn the crown, but she ruled in ways no royal diadem ever could. She fundamentally redefined what true loyalty meant. She powerfully demonstrated that a vow, even one as seemingly strange as refusing to comb your hair, could be as binding as a royal decree and far more inspiring to those who witnessed it. And although formal history books may relegate her to a mere footnote, the very dust of Parthia still vividly remembers her. Because you don't require a grand marble statue to achieve immortality. You simply need to keep your vow and win. Centuries after her death, Rodagun's story remains a captivating paradox, widely known in whispers yet remarkably elusive in written ink. No towering statue explicitly bears her likeness, no royal tomb sings her praises in intricately carved stone. But in the collective memory of those who admire rebellion, unyielding endurance, and principled ferocity, she is immortal. Not in the way kings are remembered, but in the enduring way forces of nature are etched into memory. She didn't need to conquer foreign lands or sign monumental treaties. What she fundamentally conquered was rigid expectation. In a world where women were routinely told to remain behind curtains while men shed blood in their name, Rodagun defiantly tore the curtain down and marched forth, barefoot, helmet firmly in hand. She didn't humbly ask for command, she powerfully took it. And the empire didn't collapse, it simply followed her lead. More importantly, she taught her people a profound lesson that no mere decree could ever enforce. That true loyalty does not stem from fear. It originates from witnessing your leader suffer intensely beside you, from observing them choose unwavering discipline over fleeting comfort, from watching them keep a solemn vow longer than anyone thought humanly possible. She wasn't perfect. No true legend ever is. But her story endures precisely because it wasn't meticulously polished or immaculately clean. It was tangled, muddy, and profoundly honest, much like her hair on that final victorious day. In that very grubbiness lay profound dignity. In that powerful vow resided a vision of leadership stronger than any inherited title. When her soldiers gazed upon her, they didn't merely perceive a princess. They saw someone who believed in the righteousness of the fight more deeply than in her own personal vanity. And that's the part history couldn't quite erase. Even now, long after Parthia has crumbled to dust and its once proud cities have turned to sand, her name resurfaces in moments of resistance. Artists revive her image, writers tirelessly search for her footprints, a solemn vow not to wash until ultimate victory. It sounds absurd to some, but to those who've had to relentlessly claw their way through injustice, it makes perfect, visceral sense. Rodagun was never about superficial glamour. She was about unyielding grit. And in the end, it was the very dust that crowned her, not precious gold. Dust, the same substance emperors frantically try to escape in death, yet the very thing she proudly wore like an honorable badge. She was forgotten by kings, largely ignored by official chroniclers, but indelibly remembered by the dust. And that is precisely where true legends genuinely live, not in cold stone, but in the living soil. Before mighty empires clashed and blood soaked the ancient sands, before kings trembled at her name, Tamiris was simply a daughter of the wind, born to the raw, open steppe. The land she hailed from was not gilded in marble or resonating with profound philosophy. It was brutal, profoundly free, and endlessly vast. This was the world of the Masajatai, fierce nomadic horse archers who rode like untamed spirits of the plains, their lives meticulously shaped by relentless survival, unwavering honor, and perpetual warfare. We know little of Tamiris's early childhood, but we can vividly imagine its rhythm. She would have learned to skillfully ride before she could even run, to expertly shoot before she could speak in full sentences. Among the Masajatai, young girls were not confined in tents or veiled by enforced silence. They diligently trained beside the boys, rode with the warriors, and grew up with iron in their very blood. To lead, one had to bleed, and even as a young woman, Tamiris bled profusely for her people. Her tribe worshipped the sun and the vast sky, subsisted off their hardy herds, and interred their deceased with weapons, preparing them for continued battle in the afterlife. They possessed no permanent cities, no gleaming golden temples, but they possessed immense pride. And when formidable enemies approached, they met them not with desperate prayers, but with a volley of arrows. Tamiris likely ascended to power after the death of her husband, who may have previously ruled the tribe. But what is unequivocally certain is that when the moment arrived, she didn't merely inherit leadership, she decisively seized it. In a time when most women were tragically considered property, Tamiris fearlessly commanded an entire army. She confidently negotiated with kings. She dared to speak as a true equal, and if they initially refused to listen, she made them listen through force. She was more than a queen, she was Shah-Mat, the steppe's ultimate checkmate, a formidable war chief clad in bronze and leather who would soon confront the greatest empire on earth. But immense power, particularly for a woman in that era, never comes without significant consequence. As Tamiris began to solidify her rule, unsettling whispers grew louder across the mountains to the south. A powerful king was keenly observing her. His name was Cyrus the Great, and he desired more. The stage was set, the relentless steppe wind howled its ominous warning, and Tamiris, daughter of fierce warriors, would soon gallop into legend. While Tamiris reigned over the vast open steppes far to the south, a fundamentally different kind of power was steadily rising, structured, imperious, and utterly relentless. Cyrus the Great, the visionary founder of the Achaemenid Empire, had already subjugated Lydia in the west and conquered Babylon in the south. His triumphant banners now flew over sprawling deserts, towering mountains, and cities where languages subtly shifted every few days' ride. But Cyrus was far from finished. He was an insatiable builder of empires, and every ambitious builder eventually gazes keenly at the horizon. To Cyrus, the Massagetae represented a curious threat wrapped in tempting opportunity. They were not rich in gleaming gold or magnificent cities, but they strategically controlled the northeastern frontier, which provided crucial access to key lands, vital resources, and lucrative trade routes. More importantly, the Massagetae possessed something no empire could afford to ignore: unyielding pride. And pride, in Cyrus's calculating eyes, could always be either skillfully bent or utterly broken. However, Cyrus also understood that brute force was not always the most effective initial move. He had cultivated a formidable reputation for cleverness, shrewd diplomacy, and strategic trickery. So he attempted a different approach, one that countless kings before him had successfully employed to neutralize threats without shedding a single drop of blood. He proposed marriage. According to ancient sources, most notably the historian Herodotus, Cyrus dispatched envoys to Tamiris, formally offering an alliance through matrimony. On paper, it appeared to be a grand royal match: the mighty king of Persia and the formidable warrior queen of the Massagetae. But Tamiris was far from naive. She astutely perceived the proposal for what it truly was: not an offer of genuine love or sincere partnership, but a cold, calculated attempt to peacefully absorb her people without a fight. She firmly declined, and that unequivocal rejection did not sit well in the opulent halls of Persepolis. With the diplomatic games now concluded, Cyrus reverted to his favored language: war. He immediately ordered his vast army to cross the Araxes River, the natural barrier that separated Persia from the formidable land of the Massagetae. He was determined to take what Tamiris had stubbornly refused to surrender. But Tamiris was already diligently preparing. She intimately knew the terrain. She understood how her people fought, on horseback, with incredible speed and furious intensity. And most importantly, she knew Cyrus was not merely coming for land. He was coming to utterly crush a woman who dared to say no. The world's most powerful king had declared war, but he had no idea what kind of unyielding fury he had just awakened on the vast steppe. Cyrus the Great, a master strategist and seasoned conqueror, firmly believed he could outwit Tamiris. He had faced countless kings, brutally crushed entire cities, and successfully subdued numerous nations. To him, the Massagetae were little more than wild nomads with exceptionally fast horses and no permanent cities to defend. He failed to realize he was stepping directly into the path of someone just as cunning and far more consumed by righteous fury. Tamiris had explicitly warned him. After defiantly rejecting his marriage offer, she sent a chillingly clear message: cross the Araxes River and you will regret it bitterly. But Cyrus crossed regardless, meticulously constructing a bridge of boats to transport his vast army into Massagetae territory. Instead of immediately striking, Tamiris shrewdly pulled her forces back, artfully luring Cyrus deeper into unfamiliar terrain. The Persians subsequently discovered an abandoned camp, conveniently well-stocked with food and, more significantly, copious amounts of wine, a luxury the nomadic Massagetae rarely indulged in. It was a meticulously baited trap, and Cyrus, perhaps mistakenly assuming the enemy had panicked and fled, eagerly took it. Inside the camp, he strategically left a portion of his army under the command of General Harpagus, a trusted officer. As the Massagetae returned under the protective cover of night, they fell upon the inebriated and unsuspecting Persians with deadly precision. The ensuing battle was brutal and swift. Among the fallen was Spargapeses, Tamiris' own son and a respected Massagetae commander. Accounts differ on what transpired next. Some narrate that Spargapeses was taken alive and upon realizing his capture begged for death and took his own life. Others claim he was killed directly in the ferocious fighting. But all historical accounts agree. When news reached Tamiris, something profound within her shattered and then irrevocably hardened into steel. Her grief was volcanic in its intensity, but her ensuing rage, that became legendary. She sent another chilling message to Cyrus. This one was not a warning, it was a solemn, unyielding vow. "You may be a glutton for blood," she declared, "but I swear I will give you your absolute fill." She promised to make the very ground run red with Persian blood, and her vengeance would not be a quiet affair. Cyrus had taken her son. He had violently violated her sacred land. Now he would face not merely the queen of the Masajatai, but the avenging mother of a slain warrior, and that would be the last face he would ever see. The next battle would not be a mere skirmish, it would be a definitive execution. The sun rose over the vast plains like a freshly honed blade, sharp and blinding. Tamiris stood at the head of her army, no longer just a queen, but a literal storm embodied. Her warriors, hardened by a lifetime of nomadic existence, painted their faces with ash and raw rage. This was no longer about complex politics. This was about fundamental blood. Cyrus, for all his immense might, had tragically underestimated the Masajatai. He mistakenly assumed they would fight like the disorganized tribes he had conquered before, chaotic, uncoordinated, and easily crushable. But Tamiris had spent her entire life among skilled warriors. She intuitively understood how to strike not blindly, but with devastating precision. She passionately rallied her forces for a full-scale, furious assault on the Persian invaders. And this time, she was holding nothing back. The precise location of this final, cataclysmic battle is lost to history, swallowed by the immense vastness of the steppe. But what is unequivocally clear is that Tamiris launched a ferocious counterattack. Her cavalry swept across the plains like an unstoppable tide of gleaming knives. They expertly fired arrows from horseback, closed in with brutal axes, and fought with the desperate intensity of people who had nothing left to lose. The Persians, though battle-hardened, disciplined, and highly experienced, were completely unprepared for this level of organized fury. Tamiris didn't just lead her troops from afar. She actively fought beside them. Her very presence on the battlefield ignited her warriors like a rapidly spreading wildfire. Every single strike was fueled by profound vengeance. Every charge was a direct answer to her son's tragic death. Cyrus desperately attempted to hold the line, but it utterly shattered. The Persians were completely routed. Many perished where they stood, others fled into the endless grasslands, only to be relentlessly hunted down. And Cyrus the Great, the formidable man who had conquered Babylon, Lydia, and nearly the entire known world, finally fell in the ensuing chaos. Whether he was slain in direct combat or captured and subsequently executed depends on the specific version of the story, but either way, he died strictly on Tamiris's terms. What transpired next is infamous. According to the ancient historian Herodotus, Tamiris discovered Cyrus's body on the blood-soaked battlefield, ordered his head to be severed, and then, in a chilling final act of symbolic revenge, immersed it in a wineskin filled with human blood. "Drink your fill," she is reported to have said, "of the blood you thirsted for." Was it historical fact or a dramatic poetic embellishment? Perhaps both, but it didn't fundamentally matter. The powerful message was eternal. Tamiris was not to be conquered. When the dust settled over the plains and the grass drank deep the blood of the fallen empire, Tamiris stood victorious, a warrior queen who had accomplished what no king or army before her had managed. She brought Cyrus the Great to his definitive end. News of the devastating defeat sent profound shockwaves across the ancient world. The mighty Achaemenid Empire, once believed to be unstoppable, had been decisively humiliated by a woman from the steppes. The Persians desperately attempted to downplay the immense loss, but the irrefutable death of their revered founder could not be ignored. Cyrus's body was eventually returned and interred with full honors in the royal tomb at Pasargadae, yet the indelible stain of his final defeat would linger like a festering wound on the empire's proud legacy. For Tamiris and the Masajatai, however, the victory was more than mere revenge. It was a powerful declaration. They had successfully defended their sovereignty, not just with weapons, but with immense dignity. Tamiris had courageously stood up to the world's most powerful ruler, and she hadn't merely survived, she had unequivocally triumphed. And then, she mysteriously vanished from historical records. No surviving accounts detail her later years, her ultimate death, or any successors she may have appointed. It's as if, after exacting her profound vengeance, Tamiris simply rode back into the horizon and allowed the relentless wind to carry her legend forward. In the centuries that followed, historians, poets, and chroniclers would attempt to fill in the blanks, transforming her into a symbol as much as a historical woman. To the Persians, her name was a bitter, enduring reminder. To the Greeks, she was a captivating paradox, a barbarian who displayed more profound nobility than many of their own kings. And to the indigenous peoples of Central Asia, Tomyris evolved into enduring folklore, a ghostly queen who continues to ride through the vast steppe, fierce and unbending, wielding a sword that perpetually remembers. Her powerful legacy would inspire countless depictions across diverse cultures. Medieval manuscripts portrayed her in regal, battle-worn armor. Renaissance paintings vividly imagined her towering triumphantly over Cyrus's lifeless corpse. In every age, she became precisely what people needed: a mother avenger, a wild and untamed queen, a harsh lesson in hubris, or a powerful symbol of feminine strength. But one truth cuts through all the myth: she undeniably changed history. Tomyris didn't inherit a throne. She forged it in relentless fire and unyielding fury. And for one brief, unforgettable moment, the steppe queen powerfully proved that not all empires are destined to rise. Some ultimately fall to the thundering hooves of warriors who ride with burning vengeance in their hearts. Much of what we know about Tomyris comes not from local Massagetai records, as they left no stone tablets or extensive royal archives, but from the insightful pen of a Greek historian, Herodotus. Often revered as the father of history, writing a century after her time, he immortalized Tomyris in his seminal work, Histories, depicting her as a warrior queen of astonishing resolve and terrifying vengeance. But Herodotus wasn't simply reporting cold facts. He was skillfully weaving a compelling story, one part historical chronicle, one part morality tale. To him and his contemporary Greek audience, Tomyris represented the ultimate reversal of imperial arrogance. Cyrus the Great, a man who had triumphantly conquered half the known world, fell not to a vast organized army or a powerful rival king, but to a single woman who fought not for abstract glory, but for the profound love of her child. Her victory was almost mythic in its scale, and Herodotus treated it as such. He even meticulously detailed her gruesome revenge: the wineskin filled with blood, the severed head of Cyrus, and her damning words, "Drink your fill." But was it historically accurate? Modern historians debate this endlessly. Some argue that Herodotus exaggerated or even invented parts of the tale, strategically using Tomyris as a narrative tool to symbolically humble the formidable Persian Empire, which at the time of his writing was still a looming, threatening force over the Greek world. Others believe that while the blood wineskin episode might be symbolic or embellished, the core event, Cyrus's death at the hands of Tomyris and the Massagetai, likely did occur. There's also the question of inherent bias. Herodotus, for all his insightful observations, often filtered foreign cultures through a distinctly Greek lens. He portrayed the Massagetai as wild and free, yet simultaneously noble, an exotic mirror reflecting Greek ideals of honor and liberty. Tomyris, within that interpretative framework, was not merely a barbarian. She served as a powerful moral counterweight to pervasive Persian ambition. Still, even if some details became blurred or exaggerated over time, Herodotus succeeded in one crucial thing: he ensured Tomyris would never be forgotten. Because of his writings, she transcended being a mere historical footnote. She irrevocably entered the timeless realm of legend, where facts soften, but profound impact sharpens. And in that intriguing space between myth and memory, Tomyris's story found a strange and enduring kind of immortality. In a world largely dominated by kings and conquerors, Herodotus left us with the powerful image of a queen who staunchly refused to kneel and left her enemies bleeding in the desert sand. Though she may have slain one of the ancient world's most iconic emperors, Tomyris never ruled a vast empire herself. Her people, the Massagetai, were fundamentally nomads, living not by the rigid confines of walls, but by the inherent rhythms of the land, the boundless sky, and the swift horse. This meant that Tomyris's legacy was never formalized or institutionalized. There were no grand marble busts or official royal coins bearing her likeness, no extensive archives to immortalize her decrees. Instead, her compelling story passed on as stories do on the steppe, through the flickering firelight, through powerful song, and through the whispered awe of generations of warriors. The Massagetai were one of many powerful nomadic tribes of the Central Asian steppes. Their cousins included the Scythians, the Saka, and the Dahi, all renowned as expert horse archers who roamed the vast lands between the Caspian Sea and the borders of ancient China. These tribes were deeply feared by established empires for their incredible mobility, their unpredictable tactics, and their ferocious intensity in battle. Tamiris, as a female leader among them, was rare but not entirely unique within their culture. Steppe culture, unlike many sedentary civilizations, often afforded women far greater freedoms. Women actively rode, hunted, fought, and even led their people. Among the Scythians, archaeologists have discovered graves of female warriors interred with weapons, armor, and horse gear, conclusively confirming that the stories of fierce steppe queens were more than just legend. Tamiris stood at the absolute pinnacle of that formidable tradition. Her power did not originate from inherited rights or religious decree. It stemmed from earned respect, raw grit, and sheer capability. She served as a unifying force among scattered clans, functioning as both a shrewd political leader and a formidable military commander in a challenging landscape where survival unequivocally meant riding faster, shooting more accurately, and fearing absolutely nothing. But because the Massagetai left no permanent monuments, Tamiris became a kind of phantom queen, her name resonating only in the writings of foreign outsiders and in the vibrant oral traditions of the steppe itself. To the Persian scribes, she was a cautionary warning. To the Greeks, she was a compelling marvel. And to her own people, she was likely a cherished memory carried in bloodlines and powerful battle songs, a guiding ghost who rode eternally with them across the vast plains. Empires may rise and fall, casting their shadows in stone, but the enduring stories of the steppe live on forever in the wind. And Tamiris, fierce, grieving, and utterly unbroken, became its resonant voice. Centuries passed, and the empires that once surrounded the Massagetai rose and subsequently crumbled. Cyrus's successors built the magnificent Persepolis, fiercely battled Alexander the Great, and eventually faded into the dusty footnotes of time. But Tamiris's legend endured, not within the opulent palaces of kings, but in the resilient hearts of those who steadfastly refused to bow. Across the vast expanse of Central Asia, she transcended the role of a mere queen. She became a powerful symbol of female strength, of unyielding resistance, and of the untamed spirit of the steppe. In many respects, Tamiris embodied a kind of defiance that transcended all geographical boundaries. She was not Roman, not Greek, not Persian, and thus her compelling story belonged to no single empire. That made her both profoundly dangerous and incredibly inspiring. In the medieval Islamic world, chroniclers occasionally mentioned her name, reshaped by language but never quite forgotten. In some versions, she was praised for her unwavering justice and righteous vengeance. In others, she was portrayed as a savage queen, a stark reminder that immense power in the hands of a woman could be both glorious and terrifying. By the time the Renaissance emerged, European artists rediscovered her powerful tale through the ancient writings of Herodotus. Painters depicted her in elaborate, regal armor, standing triumphantly over Cyrus's lifeless body. In one particularly dramatic painting, she is shown holding his severed head aloft like a gruesome trophy, blood-soaked and utterly victorious. It was theatrical, yes, but also deeply political. These artists were captivated by the radical idea of a woman who didn't just survive in a man's world, she decisively won. In the 19th and 20th centuries, Tamiris transformed into a powerful nationalist icon in regions like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan. Poets and educators reclaimed her as a vital historical heroine, powerful proof that the roots of Central Asian identity were fierce, proud, and profoundly feminine. Her name began appearing in textbooks, statues, and even military ceremonies. A woman who had once ruled on horseback with a bow firmly in hand was now riding once more through memory and myth, through narratives of rebellion and national pride. In a world that continues to grapple with the idea of powerful women, Tamiris remains a compelling challenge. She wasn't perfect, saintly, or easily tamed. She was decisive, brutal when absolutely necessary, and compassionate only to those who truly deserved it. She was resistance in human form, and the blood of empire on her hands was a powerful crown she wore without apology. History tends to predominantly favor the builders of grand monuments, the meticulous writers of laws, and the kings who confidently carved their names into enduring stone. Tamiris did none of these things. She left no enduring empire behind, no magnificent palace to excavate, no royal seal to decipher. And yet her name still lives on, not because she ruled forever, but because she defiantly refused to be erased. She stands as a striking contradiction to how history often remembers women, not as mere helpmates or footnotes, but as undeniable forces of destiny. Tamiris didn't humbly beg for recognition. She powerfully took it with blood and fire. She didn't ride submissively behind a king. She bravely rode against one and definitively won. Her compelling story is retold in classrooms from Central Asia to Europe, not simply because she killed Cyrus the Great, but because she dared to openly defy him. She wasn't defending an established empire. She was fiercely defending freedom, a freedom that rode gracefully on the backs of horses, that hunted skillfully with hawks, that slept peacefully under the stars, a freedom that could not be neatly drawn on any map. Today, her statues majestically rise from Kazakhstan's capital cities, and her powerful face adorns national coins and textbooks. To modern Central Asians, she is a revered mother of nations, a vital link to a pre-Islamic, pre-Soviet, proudly nomadic past. A powerful reminder that their identity wasn't forged in submission, but in the resonant cry of battle and the thunderous gallop of horses. In a world still divided by power, by gender, by selective memory, Tamiris serves as a powerful beacon, not just because she killed a great king, but because she taught us something even greater, that true dignity is not bestowed, it is fiercely seized, that sometimes authentic leadership manifests as a grieving mother who profoundly refuses to let the killer walk away unpunished. We often ponder why some names endure while others completely vanish. Tamiris survived because she was utterly unforgettable. Because in a time when women were generally expected to disappear into the tents of men, she bravely rose, blade firmly in hand, unyielding fury in her heart, and meticulously carved her own indelible story into the very flesh of history. Empires may fall, statues may crumble, but true legends ride eternally. And somewhere in the whispering winds of the vast steppe, a queen still gallops, unbroken, undefeated, and utterly unforgettable. In ancient Egypt, beekeeping wasn't merely a hobby. It was a state-sponsored science with explicit divine approval. Long before modern apiaries, Egyptians had already developed an organized, mobile system for effectively managing bees and extracting honey. By 2400 BCE, the practice of beekeeping was meticulously depicted in detail on the walls of tombs within the sun-drenched necropolises of Saqqara. It wasn't just about harvesting honey. It was considered a sacred practice, deeply embedded in agriculture, medicine, religion, and even the intricate rituals of the afterlife. The Egyptians utilized horizontal clay tube hives, typically stacked in rows and laid on their sides. These were nothing like modern wooden boxes. They more closely resembled terracotta drain pipes, and they were cleverly designed to be seasonally relocated. As the Nile's floodwaters receded and vibrant flowers bloomed along its banks, the beehives were strategically moved up and down the river to follow the natural nectar flow. This transhumance method was incredibly advanced for its time, almost like ancient GPS for bees. Beekeepers employed clay or stone pipes to gently blow smoke into the hives, calming the bees before the delicate honey extraction process. Without protective suits, these keepers had to rely on careful timing, extensive experience, and a fair bit of raw courage. Honeycombs were removed gently, and the honey was collected not only for food, but also for its vital uses in medicine, mummification, and sacred religious rites. Honey was considered a direct gift from the gods, a divine substance intimately associated with Ra, the powerful sun god. According to ancient Egyptian myth, bees were miraculously born from the tears of Ra as they fell to earth. This wasn't poetic fluff, it profoundly shaped how the Egyptians treated bees, as vital messengers between the mortal world and the divine realm. Honey was used in temple offerings, elaborate funerary rituals, and even served as a form of currency in trade. It also held a prominent role in medicine. Ancient papyri list honey as a key ingredient in over 500 different remedies, often mixed with herbs, wine, or milk to treat a wide range of ailments, from eye infections to gastrointestinal issues. Its inherent antibacterial properties were well known, even if the underlying science wasn't fully understood. Beeswax, too, was diligently harvested and utilized in cosmetics, embalming processes, and even in writing tablets. It possessed value beyond the hive, becoming an integral part of daily life for scribes, priests, and healers alike. In Egypt, the hive wasn't merely a source of sweetness. It was a powerful symbol of balance, healing, and celestial order, meticulously cultivated under the watchful eyes of both humans and gods. While Egypt gave beekeeping structure and profound sanctity, ancient Mesopotamia gave it something equally vital: a codified legal framework. The cradle of civilization didn't just master sophisticated irrigation techniques, developed complex writing systems, and pioneered city building. They also instinctively understood the immense value of honey and the crucial importance of protecting its production. Though Mesopotamian beekeeping wasn't as visually celebrated as it was in elaborate Egyptian tombs, its traces are found in cuneiform tablets and extensive legal codes, suggesting a quietly sophisticated practice. References to bees and honey appear as early as the ancient Sumerian period. In Akkadian and Babylonian texts, there are specific mentions of bee gardens or apiaries. These designated spaces were often attached to temple grounds or royal estates, indicating that honey production was primarily an elite-controlled resource. Honey and beeswax were extensively used in religious offerings, medicine, food, and trade, and the loss of a hive could result in a serious economic blow. The most telling piece of evidence comes from the renowned Code of Hammurabi, dating to around 1754 BCE. While the majority of the code is famously dedicated to crucial issues like theft, injury, and agriculture, a few explicit lines directly address disputes involving bees. If someone permitted their bees to swarm into another man's field and the bees subsequently caused damage, they were held legally liable. If honey was stolen, restitution had to be made, sometimes in the form of silver or replacement jars. In a world where almost everything was meticulously counted in terms of grain, the fact that honey warranted its own specific legal protection speaks volumes about its importance. Mesopotamians also perceived bees as more than mere insects. Some texts describe them as divine messengers, even linking them to Ninurta, the god of agriculture and military. Beeswax in particular was highly valued for sealing important documents and for crafting ritual figurines. It served both practical and mystical purposes, being part of both daily bureaucracy and profound magic. Though the exact design of Mesopotamian hives isn't fully preserved in the archaeological record, scholars believe they may have utilized mud brick or woven basket hives, similar to early Levantine styles. These would likely have been kept in shaded gardens or on rooftops, meticulously protected from the harsh summer heat. Mesopotamian beekeeping was less about direct worship and more about established structure, regulating resources, ensuring fairness, and diligently maintaining the economic balance of a society where even a bee sting might unexpectedly lead to litigation. Here, the hive was not just a biological wonder. It was a microcosm of order, law, and the very civilizing impulse itself. In the rugged highlands of Anatolia, long before the Greeks took center stage in the ancient world, the Hittites were quietly mastering the sophisticated art of beekeeping. And they certainly weren't treating it like a casual backyard hobby. To the Hittites, bees were sacred agents of purity, vital messengers between realms, and essential to both successful agriculture and the spiritual health of the entire kingdom. Unlike in Egypt and Mesopotamia, where beekeeping was a practical blend of science and economics, the Hittites adopted a more ritualistic approach. In religious texts dating from the 14th and 13th centuries BCE, bees are mentioned not merely as producers of honey, but as active, crucial participants in purification rites. One famous Hittite ritual text describes a ceremony in which a live bee is summoned to go and remove the evil, the impurity, and the wrath of the gods. The bee is then gently released, not killed, a rare demonstration of mercy in ancient rites, strongly suggesting a deep reverence for the insect. The Hittites valued honey for both its delectable taste and its sacred utility. It was used in libations, solemn sacrificial offerings, and anointing rituals, often combined with wine, milk, or grain. Honey wasn't merely consumed, it was poured, ritually burned, and blessed. It served as a vital medium between human intention and divine reception. In terms of practical beekeeping, evidence suggests the Hittites used clay or woven hives, likely stored in protected enclosures near temples or royal estates. Though the archaeological record is somewhat sparse, parallels with neighboring Levantine and Syrian traditions hint at portable, tube-like hives, possibly crafted from straw and mud, stacked and managed much like those observed in Egypt. Beekeepers in the Hittite world likely operated under strict temple control, their work deeply embedded in seasonal festivals and state rituals. Honey was not a mere commodity. It was a powerful tool of diplomacy, healing, and profound spiritual cleansing. The humble bee, seemingly small and unassuming, held symbolic weight that far exceeded its physical size. The Hittites also contributed a vital piece to the global understanding of bees. They accurately recognized bee migration patterns. Some surviving texts meticulously describe the seasonal behaviors of swarms, intricately linking blooming patterns with honey flow, an insight that clearly demonstrates how closely they observed their natural environment. In ancient Anatolia, the gentle hum of the hive wasn't merely background noise. It was perceived as a sacred frequency, vibrating profoundly through the very bones of gods and kings alike. The ancient Greeks didn't just study bees. They admired them, feared them, and even subtly modeled aspects of their society on the bee's mysterious order. To the Greeks, the hive was far more than a simple place of honey production. It was a living metaphor, a perfect model for the ideal city-state, a powerful symbol of divine order, and a constant source of endless scientific curiosity. Greek beekeepers significantly advanced the science of apiculture with a unique blend of practical knowledge and philosophical flair. Unlike earlier civilizations that primarily used stationary clay hives, the Greeks developed movable terracotta hives with removable lids and sections. These innovative designs allowed for easier access to the honeycomb without destroying the entire colony, representing an early, crucial step towards sustainable harvesting practices. They also mastered the art of smoke control. Using ceramic bellows and specialized clay smokers, they would carefully puff smoke into the hive entrance, effectively sedating the bees before honey extraction. This ingenious innovation not only reduced painful stings, but also preserved the hive's delicate structure, allowing for multiple harvests per season. One of the most influential minds in Greek history, Aristotle, meticulously studied bees in extraordinary detail. In his comprehensive Historia Animalium, he vividly described hive behavior, accurately noting that bees appeared to have distinct roles. Some diligently gathered nectar, others staunchly defended the hive, and one, whom he mistakenly identified as the king bee, seemed to lead the colony. Although he erred on the gender of the queen, Aristotle's groundbreaking observations laid the foundational groundwork for centuries of future bee research. Honey held a deeply revered place in Greek culture. It sweetened wine, preserved fruits, and flavored various cakes. It was also extensively used as a base for medicinal salves, particularly in wound care, and was universally regarded as a divine gift. The Greeks firmly believed that ambrosia, the sacred food of the gods, was a miraculous mixture of honey and wine. The bee itself held profound mythological significance. It was intimately associated with Artemis, the fierce goddess of wild things, and Demeter, the nurturing goddess of the harvest. Priestesses of Artemis were even known as Melissae, the Greek word for bees. These women were considered vital channels between the divine and mortal realms. The Oracle of Delphi, one of the most important religious centers in the ancient world, was believed by some to have originally been presided over by bee priestesses. Even the famed Pythia, the Delphic prophetess, was sometimes affectionately called the Delphic bee. The hive itself was often viewed as a perfect microcosm of ideal order, disciplined, selfless, and immensely productive. Philosophers and mystics frequently compared the intricate bee society to an ideal human society, cooperative, industrious, and profoundly reverent. The Stoics particularly admired bees for their instinctive sense of duty. Early Christians would later adopt the bee as a powerful symbol of chastity and resurrection, noting how bees create but do not lust. For the Greeks, the hive was both a scientific marvel and a profound spiritual emblem, a constant reminder that even the smallest creatures move with purpose, discipline, and inherent grace. In diligently studying bees, they believed they were ultimately studying the very fundamental laws of nature, and perhaps even of the gods themselves. If the Greeks studied bees with profound wonder, the Romans managed them with unyielding ambition. Beekeeping in the vast Roman Empire wasn't just a minor cottage industry. It was meticulously scaled to match the immense needs of a civilization that stretched across continents. From the sprawling vineyards of Gaul to the rugged hills of Hispania, Rome transformed the humble beehive into an empire-wide enterprise. The Romans inherited much of their sophisticated apicultural knowledge from the Greeks and Etruscans, but they expanded it into a highly formalized agricultural science. Influential writers like Varro and Columella meticulously recorded detailed instructions for constructing hives, harvesting honey, and strategically relocating colonies. Their comprehensive treatises describe beekeeping with a startling degree of modernity, including precise observations on swarm behavior, seasonal cycles, and effective pest control. Roman hives came in many varied forms: hollow logs, ingenious cork bark containers, traditional clay tubes, and even woven baskets meticulously sealed with dung or mud. Flexibility was paramount. In colder climates, more insulation was required. In warmer provinces, efficient ventilation was critical. These innovations allowed Rome's beekeepers to skillfully adapt the craft across vastly different geographical regions of the empire. To calm the bees, Romans commonly employed clay pots filled with smoldering fragrant herbs like thyme or oregano. The gentle smoke soothed the hive and possibly imparted subtle flavors to the harvested honey. Harvesting was typically done with sharp iron knives, and wax was separated by melting and straining, later utilized in candles, writing tablets, cosmetics, and even for waterproofing ships. Honey was not just a food item, it was ubiquitous. It was added to wine to create mulsum, extensively used in baking, incorporated into sauces for both meat and fish, and even served as an early crucial energy source for athletes and soldiers. Roman physicians, diligently following Hippocratic traditions, prescribed honey for various ailments, including sore throats, wounds, fevers, and digestive problems. Its potent antibacterial properties were well known and widely utilized. But perhaps the most distinctly Roman characteristic of their beekeeping was its unparalleled organization. Large villas often featured dedicated honey farms managed by enslaved labor under the meticulous supervision of estate managers. Production was diligently recorded in ledgers, and any surplus honey was sold in bustling markets or meticulously exported to distant provinces. Bees were viewed not merely as insects, but as productive, integral citizens of the robust Roman economy. To the Romans, a well-run beehive perfectly mirrored a well-run household, orderly, obedient, and endlessly fruitful. While ancient civilizations assiduously cultivated bees for their precious honey and useful wax, many also perceived the hive as a profound doorway to the divine. Across Egypt, Greece, Mesopotamia, and beyond, bees were not just mere insects. They were regarded as spiritual beings, perpetually buzzing between distinct worlds, diligently delivering messages from powerful gods, and offering sacred gifts like honey that seamlessly bridged the natural and supernatural realms. In Egypt, bees were directly and intimately tied to divine creation. As mentioned earlier, ancient mythology claimed that Ra, the powerful sun god, shed tears that miraculously transformed into bees upon touching the fertile earth. Honey was extensively used in temple offerings to appease deities and to accompany the deceased into the afterlife. The bee also became a significant royal symbol. Pharaohs of Lower Egypt proudly bore the title, "He of the Sedge and the Bee," thereby connecting their earthly authority to the cosmic harmony inherent in the hive. In Greece, the bee held powerful feminine symbolism. The priestesses of Demeter and Artemis, revered goddesses of fertility and wilderness respectively, were respectfully called Melissae, or bees. These women were considered vital channels between the divine and mortal realms. The Oracle of Delphi, one of the most important religious centers in the ancient world, was believed by some to have originally been presided over by bee priestesses. Even the famed Pythia, the Delphic prophetess, was sometimes affectionately called the Delphic bee. The hive itself was often seen as a microcosm of perfect order, disciplined, selfless, and incredibly productive. Philosophers and mystics frequently compared the intricate bee society to an ideal human society, cooperative, industrious, and profoundly reverent. The Stoics admired bees for their instinctive sense of duty. Early Christians would later adopt the bee as a powerful symbol of chastity and resurrection, noting how bees create but do not lust. In the magical traditions of Mesopotamia, bees were ritually invoked in purification ceremonies. In some Hittite ceremonies, a live bee was released after supposedly absorbing the impurities of the community, quite literally carrying sin away on its tiny wings. Honey and wax were burned in sacred fires, used in crafting protective amulets, and embedded in magical texts for blessings and healing purposes. The bee was more than a mere metaphor. It was a living bridge, a creature that inhabited nature's hidden spaces, produced golden food without killing, and only stung in defense. To ancient peoples, bees weren't just miraculous, they were profoundly mystical. To the ancient world, honey wasn't just delicious, it was considered divine medicine. Long before bacteria were even discovered, people instinctively knew that honey could effectively clean wounds, soothe persistent coughs, and even remarkably preserve the human body. It wasn't magic, though it often felt like it. It was, in essence, practical chemistry, centuries ahead of its formal scientific explanation. In Egypt, honey served as a cornerstone of ancient medicine. Medical papyri like the Ebers Papyrus, dating to circa 1550 BCE, list honey as a key ingredient in over 500 different prescriptions. It was frequently mixed with milk, figs, garlic, and various herbs to treat a wide range of ailments, from stubborn eye infections to troublesome digestive problems. When combined with animal fat or resin, it was effectively applied as a salve to burns and cuts. Doctors observed that wounds treated with honey healed faster and showed greater resistance to infection, likely due to honey's natural acidity and the presence of hydrogen peroxide. The Greeks followed suit. Hippocrates, often hailed as the father of modern medicine, prescribed honey for respiratory problems, ulcers, and general fatigue. He notably used honey mixed with vinegar to create oxymel, a potent tonic utilized to clear phlegm and reduce fevers. Greek athletes consumed honeyed water to boost their stamina during intense Olympic training, believing it restored strength more quickly than wine or plain water alone. In India, the ancient Ayurvedic system held honey, madhu, in extremely high regard. It was meticulously classified by taste, source, and precise medicinal potency. Ayurvedic texts cautioned against overheating honey, but endorsed it as a versatile treatment for indigestion, colds, wounds, and even certain types of poisoning. It was also integrated into religious rituals, offered to gods, and consumed during sacred fasts for both spiritual and bodily cleansing. The Romans, too, firmly believed in the profound medicinal power of honey. Pliny the Elder diligently recorded dozens of remedies involving honey in his encyclopedic Naturalis Historia. It served as a versatile base for ointments, gargles, and laxatives, and was even used to treat the wounded after fierce battles. Honey mixed with poppy juice was administered as a sedative. Roman surgeons consistently kept it on hand to dress wounds and effectively reduce inflammation. Beeswax also played a significant role in ancient medicine, serving as a base for plasters, balms, and even rudimentary dental fillings. Its malleability and inherent resistance to decay made it ideal for sealing and preserving compounds. In short, honey in the ancient world wasn't just sweet, it was profoundly life-saving. It healed the sick, preserved the dead, and symbolized purity. It was effectively the pharmacy of the gods, miraculously delivered by the industrious wings of bees. Ancient beekeepers were more than mere farmers. They were true innovators, skilled engineers, and incredibly keen observers of nature. Across numerous civilizations, they developed specialized tools and sophisticated methods that allowed them to manage bee colonies effectively, harvest honey sustainably, and even protect themselves from the bees' defensive stings. One of the most crucial innovations was the intelligent design of the hive itself. The Egyptians popularized the widespread use of horizontal, cylindrical clay hives, essentially large terracotta tubes stacked in rows. These hives were remarkably durable, easily portable, and mimicked natural cavities where bees instinctively thrived. Similarly, the Greeks and Romans utilized terracotta and woven basket hives, some ingeniously designed with removable lids to allow access to honeycombs without destroying the entire colony. The ability to inspect and harvest without killing the bees was genuinely revolutionary, paving the way for modern, sustainable agricultural practices. To safely extract honey, ancient beekeepers consistently employed smoke to calm the bees. The Greeks invented clay smokers and bellows specifically designed to direct smoke into the hive's entrance. The smoke cleverly masked alarm pheromones released by guard bees, thereby significantly reducing their aggression. Romans further refined this technique by burning fragrant herbs such as thyme or oregano, which not only soothed the bees but possibly imparted subtle flavors to the honey itself. Harvesting tools varied by region and specific practice. Wooden or bronze knives were commonly used to carefully slice combs. Sometimes, honeycombs were pressed to extract liquid honey, and wax was melted and filtered for later use. Beekeepers often wore minimal protection, relying heavily on extensive experience and careful technique to avoid stings. Full suits and gloves were millennia away. Ancient texts reveal that beekeepers also meticulously observed bee behavior. They developed a profound understanding of swarm cycles, seasonal patterns, and the critical importance of strategically moving hives to optimize nectar collection. Some cultures even practiced transhumance, systematically relocating hives to follow the bloom of flowering plants, a practice very similar to modern migratory beekeeping. Additionally, effective honey storage was a crucial aspect of ancient beekeeping. Egyptians utilized sealed ceramic jars to store honey, diligently protecting it from moisture and spoilage. Honey's remarkable shelf life was well known, with some findings showing it lasting for centuries, sealed within tombs. Even the complex relationship between humans and bees was carefully managed. Rituals were often performed to appease bee spirits or specific gods, ensuring cooperation and avoiding misfortune. This spiritual care was considered just as vital as the physical tools in maintaining a productive hive. In essence, ancient beekeeping was a sophisticated blend of craftsmanship, natural science, and profound reverence. The tools and techniques they developed laid foundational principles that still directly influence modern apiculture. The ancient practice of beekeeping laid the foundational groundwork for a symbiotic relationship between humans and bees that continues to this very day. Far from being a simple agricultural activity, early beekeeping was a sophisticated art and a meticulous science that profoundly influenced medicine, religion, economy, and ecology across diverse civilizations, thereby shaping our fundamental understanding of nature and sustainability. From the fertile Nile Valley to the rugged hills of Anatolia, from the majestic temples of Greece to the sprawling farms of Rome, ancient beekeepers tirelessly honed methods to protect and sustain their precious colonies. Their groundbreaking innovations in hive design, the strategic use of smoke, and precise seasonal management allowed for sustainable honey harvests, a practice absolutely crucial for both daily survival and extensive trade. The deep respect they consistently showed for the bees' natural life cycles helped foster an enduring model of harmony between humans and the natural world. Their intuitive understanding of honey as a powerful medicine informed the early pharmacopoeias of Egypt, India, and Rome, influencing healing practices that remarkably persist in traditional medicine worldwide. Honey's inherent antibacterial and preservative properties became the vital foundation for wound care and various remedies, while beeswax shaped early technologies in cosmetics, art, and even construction. The rich symbolic and spiritual meanings consistently attributed to bees and honey in ancient cultures also continue to endure. Religious rituals honoring bees and honey persist in various traditions, reflecting humanity's ongoing fascination with the hive as a profound metaphor for order, cooperation, and divine blessing. The powerful idea of bees as messengers between worlds or as symbols of resurrection permeates art, literature, and folklore across countless centuries. Moreover, the ancient practice of migratory beekeeping, the systematic movement of hives to follow sequential floral blooms, is directly echoed in modern commercial agriculture, proving absolutely essential for widespread crop pollination and global food production. The enduring innovations of ancient beekeepers helped set the stage for today's heightened awareness of bees as vital pollinators and the significant environmental challenges they currently face. Despite monumental technological advances, the core relationship between humans and bees remains fundamentally unchanged. Humans depend profoundly on bees for sustenance, medicine, and overall ecosystem health. And bees in turn have profoundly shaped human culture, economy, and spirituality since the very dawn of civilization. The legacy of ancient beekeeping stands as a powerful testament to human ingenuity, a deep respect for nature, and the enduring power of collaboration both within the intricate hive and between species. It ultimately reminds us that even the smallest creatures can inspire profound science, unwavering faith, and essential survival.